Heading into Sunday's matchup versus the Packers, Jared Goff had been criticized about the way he performs during less than ideal weather conditions. But Goff and the Lions were able to put that slander to bed as they stayed cool, calm, and collected in what was a monsoon in Green Bay. As the Lions continue to cruise, there's another young team in Detroit looking to make some noise as their season gets underway. Is right now the perfect time to be a Detroit sports fan? Let's discuss all that and more coming up next on Motor City Connected. Yeah, so I just want to get right into it. I want to talk first about the Detroit Lions. The other team I was referring to in the open is the Detroit Pistons. I know the Red Wings are looking good as well, but I will touch on the Pistons a little later in this podcast. Not too much, but I just wanted to kind of take a look at their first couple games and kind of just what stood out to me. But let's dive deep into the Lions. What went well on Sunday? The first thing that I noticed was initially just right away getting Demont involved, getting him back in Ben Johnson's good graces. He carried 17 times for 73 yards. Wasn't anything insane or earth-shattering, but this running back core, we know we're not going to get any just breakout performances. Or not any, I should say. We're not going to get a ton of them. We're going to get a couple from Jahmyr Gibbs here and there just because he is, he can break a 70-yard touchdown every once in a while. So David Montgomery, however, he's not that type of running back, but a 17 yards, 73 carry performance. Again, a guy that just leans on defenses and just continues to run through their face. Marshawn Lynch said it a couple of years ago. When you run through somebody's face over and over and over again, they don't want to tackle you anymore. And that is especially true during the rain in a cold game, very windy. There were like 30, 40-mile-an-hour winds in Green Bay on Sunday. David Montgomery is not a guy you want to tackle when it's cold out. That hurts. I played football, and man, you try and wrap up a big dude, try and take him to the ground, that does not feel good. So I like to see that David Montgomery was kind of that featured back early on in the game. And then we were able to utilize Gibbs in different ways, getting him the ball out of the backfield and on a couple pass plays. And then continuing to utilize how much better he's gotten through the tackles. Both Demont and Jahmyr Gibbs, especially in a very rainy game, it's hard to get these guys the ball out on the edge with pitch plays or whatnot or end arounds because you have to take care of the ball in these situations. So really nice to see. We didn't have any fumbles. I don't even think we had a single fumble that we recovered ourselves. I think that the entire game was fumble free. Yeah. I mean, and that's just saying a lot. I mean, Jordan Love fumbled the ball 3 times and they were able to recover it all 3 times, but negative yardage every play that happens. So it's good to see that Demont and Jahmyr Gibbs are just very sure-handed with the ball. They're not going to give it up. They're not going to let it drop out on handoffs. And Jared Goff, we know, is just extremely proficient at being a game manager and getting his running backs the ball. Another note I had about the offense and what went well was just Amon-Ra St. Brown. Right now, he's an auto catch at this point. You throw it in his general vicinity, and he's going to come down with it. And that continued again in an absolute monsoon, like I said earlier. He had 7 targets, 7 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown, and a long of 26. You look back at his last 5 games against Seattle, 6 targets, 6 catches. Dallas, 4 targets, 4 catches. Minnesota, 8 targets, 8 catches. Tennessee, 2 targets, 2 catches. And then Green Bay, 7 targets, 7 catches. The dude does not drop the ball. You can say all you want about him being a system merchant or a slot merchant, but he could line up literally anywhere. He could line up at tight end. He could line up in the backfield, and he would still find a way to get open and catch the ball. I love the connection that Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown have developed with each other over the last couple of years, and it's only going to get better. I saw earlier in the game, or after the game, Jared Goff was talking and just saying, it's really nice to have a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is a quarterback's dream. And I know that Tom Brady up in the booth is looking at Amon-Ra and being like, that is Wes Welker. And that's Julian Edelman. And that's guys that might not be the most physically imposing players, but are just so sure-handed that they're more valuable than the Jamar Chases and the Justin Jeffersons of the league, because when you need a first down, they'll get you it. So shout out to Amon-Ra, and just shout out the trust that Ben Johnson, Jared Goff, and Amon-Ra St. Brown have developed with them three. It's a fourth and goal from about the 3 yard line early on in the game. And after Green Bay goes down and scores a field goal right away, it's a 3-0 game, crowd's into it, and you let Jared Goff just get his spot, hit Amon-Ra where he wants to hit him in the left side of the end zone, and Amon-Ra does the rest, comes down with it. And just like that, it's a 7-3 game on a fourth and goal. Just a gutsy play call, gutsy from Ben Johnson, gutsy from Dan Campbell, gutsy from Jared Goff and Amon-Ra. Like, these guys are just dudes that make plays, and they don't care about the down and distance. They know what they have to do to get the ball in the end zone, and they do just that. Um, I think, yeah, I wrote down it is so beautiful the trust that Jared and Amon-Ra have, and I'm sure I'm going to preach that the rest of this year, but I just wanted to kind of highlight that today. Um, Another thing that went well, Goff only took 1 sack in the game, and it was kind of on like a fluke play. Penei Sewell kind of got tripped up, slipped back, and they got a free rusher to Jared on third down, I believe, on one of our drives. It was one of the drive killers, but just 1 sack on the day. Another, again, like I said, in a game where the weather is not in your favor per se. You got to protect Jared. You have to protect Jared Goff, and you got to stay ahead of schedule. And we did a great job of that all game long. 8 different receivers caught the ball, which in a rainy game where you don't want to put the ball in harm's way or in double teams, it's really nice that you have so many guys you trust, so many sure-handed guys that you know are going to come down with the ball, and they aren't going to tip it up in the air for a free interception, or they're not going to run themselves right into a linebacker on a slant route. It's just nice that we have so many different weapons that Jared Goff trusts to go to, even in the conditions that Lambeau Field was in on Sunday. Um, One of my favorite drives of the game, you just open up the half, after they get the pick six, or Kirby Joseph gets the pick six. You open up the second half with a 9 play, 71-yard drive, takes about 5 minutes and 30 seconds of clock, and you punch it in on a 4th and 1 from Jahmyr Gibbs. Both our offensive touchdowns today were on 4th down, and it's a 4th and 1 from about the 15. Ben Johnson trusts the O-line, trusts Jahmyr Gibbs. They hand it off. Jahmyr Gibbs walks into the end zone from about 15 out. That just took the life out of Green Bay. You could just see they couldn't mount a comeback at that point. It's 24-3 with the weather and the defense that Aaron Glenn puts out there. It's really, really hard for teams to come back. And I think that has a lot to do with last year and the San Francisco 49ers being able to pretty effortlessly mount a comeback against Detroit and win the NFC Championship game. I think this defense is built on leaning on you and ensuring that down the stretch of games, even when you think you might be getting close, you're not. So love to see the offense open up the second half with just a beautiful drive down the field, because that just sets up our defense perfectly, and that ended up being the case throughout the rest of this game. This team is just amazing at chewing clock. It's ridiculous. Obviously, you can just give the ball to David Montgomery, and he's going to get you 5 yards every single play. It's unbelievable to watch just down the stretch of games how much this offensive line and this running attack leans and leans and leans until you physically cannot do anything to stop it. Even when you know the run's coming and it's 100% guaranteed to run, still can't stop it. So, just awesome stuff all around from the offense in this game. It wasn't the most flashy. I mean, the Packers outgained us yardage wise, but you do what you do. You do what you got to do to win, and that's what the Lions did. They wrap up their third straight win in Lambeau Field. First time that has been done since 1988. It's a new era of NFC North football, okay? It is a new era, and this team is dominating. The best division in football, nonetheless. You go into Minnesota, beat the crap. You don't beat the crap, but you beat the Vikings, who had been undefeated at that point. You waltz into Green Bay, who was 5-1, something like that, 6-1 going into that game, and you beat them. Like, it's just so refreshing to see. They walk into Lambeau Field and the lights aren't too bright anymore. It's like we walk into Lambeau and we walk in your trap, we take over your trap. Amon-Ra St. Brown waltzed into Lambeau Field with a Green Bay Sucks sweatshirt on, We never would have seen a guy do that in the past. Never. And Amon-Ra has the audacity to pull that out, then proceeds to go out and put up, whatever, 7 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. I mean, this team has got some swag to them and they've got a chip on their shoulder, and they just won 3 straight games in Lambeau Field over the last three years. I mean, that's pretty good if you ask me. Um, what went wrong? Short list. What went wrong offensively? With the rain and how the game went, the lack of offensive productivity in the second half was not very alarming to me. Like I said earlier, you don't want to put the ball in harm's way. You want to take care of it. No turnovers on the day. And I hate conservative play calling, but in that instance, I'm totally fine with it. Especially when it's raining as hard as it is and it's windy and throwing the ball down the field is really hard. Catching the ball is really hard. We saw how many drop balls the Packers had. But you can control what you can control. And Green Bay didn't do that. They didn't catch the ball when they were open, and the Lions did. And yeah, I mean, just Detroit's offensive game plan in this game was so evident. Um, Ben Johnson clearly knew the weather going to the game, and he game planned perfectly for it. Um, I don't really have a ton of what went wrong offensively. I just keep writing down things that went well. No turnovers. I mean, when you don't turn the ball over in an NFL game, you're going to win. Unless you're playing against Tom Brady in the early 2000s, you're going to win ball games because there's not a lot of offensives that, especially against this defense, that can continually put up points and can continue to put the pressure on the Lions because they don't turn the ball over. It's so refreshing to watch. I love what Ben Johnson's doing, and I love waltzing into Lambeau Field in a on their turf in a game that should favor them, considering that, the Lions have not traditionally been all that great in outdoor games the past couple of years. And you just go in, you punch him in the mouth, and yeah, and that was that. So good stuff all around. I don't have a ton that went wrong, but again, like I said, the conservative play calling, I would say if you're up 24-3 in Detroit against Green Bay in a couple months, you're not going to be able to get away with them only scoring one more time in the second half, or 2 more times, a field goal and a touchdown. So we're going to have to hopefully. We've seen it though. We've seen when we have been winning, we're still putting our best foot forward offensively and quote unquote, like Xavier McKinney said before the game, embarrassing teams. So just be glad we didn't embarrass you, Xavier. Just be glad. Um, yeah, let's move on to defense. What went well defensively? I don't know if you guys saw the picture of Aaron Glenn, and his glasses are completely covered with water. He can't see anything, but he's so locked in. I freaking love it. I love what Aaron Glenn's doing. You can see every year he's becoming more comfortable. Now that he has his guys, he's got his draft picks, he's got the team that, he's telling Brad Holmes what he needs out of a defense. And now he's got his studs. Even with the injuries, we've still got depth, and the bend don't break style of defense, what I've preached all year long, is just beautiful. The red zone defense has been so unbelievable, and it came through once again. Um, 14 points allowed. Granted, in a monsoon, but 14 points to one of the better offenses in football is something you can hang your hat on if you're Aaron Glenn and the rest of this defense. Coming into the game, no Hutchinson, no Marcus Davenport, no Josh Pascal, no Malcolm Rodriguez, no Derek Barnes. Brian Branch gets ejected in the first half. And you still find a way to just continually punch Green Bay in the mouth, whether that be at the line of scrimmage, whether that be down the field, whether that be in the flats. Like every time they thought they had a drive going, something would happen where the Lions would just punch them in the mouth and get them off balance and get off the field and put Jared Goff in the offense back out there, which is huge because, like I said earlier, we're so good at chewing clock and we're so good at managing the game that if our defense can get off the field consistently like they have been, there's not a single team in football that can beat us. Um, Yeah, so I mean, 14 points. They score three to start the game. That's kind of a little momentum booster for them, but they don't score the rest of the first half. I think we had five or six straight stops after that. So that you allow them to drive down, get comfortable. A lot of teams, when that happens, that offense starts clicking because you look at what the play sheet, you look at what you've called, and you're like, that's going to work. And it didn't. It stopped working after that because Aaron Glenn has been done such a great job of making adjustments on the fly and putting his guys in the right spot to succeed. Um, ex- Speaking of guys that are always in the right spot to succeed, Kirby freaking Joseph, man, he has a magnet to the ball in his chest. I swear, he is all over the field. He has a pick six again in this one, his sixth interception of the year. He now is tied for the most interceptions in all of football, and that number will continue to go up because he's good for an interception every game at this point. He's just always in the right spot at the right time. And if you want to say that he is an over the top merchant and that we run a lot of zone and it gives him opportunities to kind of sneak around and pick the ball off, you don't know ball. He is an all pro caliber player. 100%. Him and Brian Branch should be the one and two all pro candidates right now. And it's so fun to watch these guys operate. Even after Brian Branch went out with the ejection, Kirby Joseph just stepped up and was like, "Oh, okay, it's my secondary now," and had a pick six. No big deal. Just read a perfect screenplay. Jordan Love made an awful read. Kirby just pops in there, plucks it off to the house. Lions take a 17-3 lead at that point. Just everything about this defense is so improved from last year, and it's honestly all starting. It started with Aiden Hutchinson early on in the year, seeing his improvement, and now you've seen Brian Branch's improvement. Now you've seen Kirby Joseph's, and you've seen some of these other guys that have been role players in the past step up into that star role. So I just love what Kirby's doing. He is just such a fun player to watch. So yeah, shout out Super Bowl Curb. Um, yeah, I mean, just did a great job all day keeping a comfortable lead, never allowing Jordan Love to really get settled in at all. He looked kind of off balance all game. Granted, I think he is suffering a little injury to his hamstring right now, but if you play a quarter, if you throw a guy out there and you play him, you expect him to be 100, means you think he's 100%. So the Packers coaching staff playing him was because they thought they had the best chance to win with him in. So again, control what you can control, and Jordan Love was a little gimpy, and we took advantage of that. Late in the game, a 2nd and 1 from the Packers. I believe it would, if they would have scored a touchdown on this particular drive, they would have cut into the lead pretty significantly. It was 24-6 at this point, in the third quarter, or early on in the fourth quarter. If they score, it's a 10-point game. If they get the 2-point conversion, and a 2nd and 1 after they've driven down the field 11 plays, 74 yards, a 2nd and 1 turns into two incomplete passes and then a fourth down stop on a 4th and 1, 4th and inches from Josh Jacobs, where we just get penetration and we stop him. Again, without Malcolm Rodriguez, without Derek Barnes, without some of our best run-stopping players, still able to get the job done on one of the most important plays in the game. I mean, when we get off the field in the fourth quarter up 24-6 and they don't convert on fourth down, that pretty much was the game. They were going to attempt to come back and attempt to put up some points, which they did. They ended up scoring another touchdown. But I mean, at that junction of the game, that is massive. So just shout out to the defensive line. I think that was my favorite play of the game. I love a non-flashy play, a play that just doesn't really get brought up in a ton of conversations after the fact, but was extremely crucial to the outcome of the game. So just good. So I don't remember who got the tackle, but whoever it was, I love you. Good job. Shout out to Aaron Glenn for just knowing how to coach a defense. Um, just unreal will to win by everyone on the field and the staff. The collective effort that goes unnoticed week in and week out is just massively important. I mean, you can't have a good bend don't break defense, especially a team that's filling in 5 or 6 starter positions with backups, You don't find success unless all 11 guys are absolutely locked in. And this Lions defense is the definition of locked in. Their attention to detail and their ability to take coaching in stride throughout a game and make adjustments is just so awesome to see. I can't speak highly enough about what Aaron Glenn has done, especially considering I was not a big Aaron Glenn fan in the past. Sometimes last year I was very hard on him, but I love what he's doing, and I think he's such a talented coach with so much in his bag that he can throw at you. Um, it continues to have offenses off balance. So shout out to Aaron Glenn. What didn't go well, there was a couple things that I didn't love, but again, that's going to happen. We're going to give up yards when you're a bend don't break defense. So I just want to touch on a couple things though. Josh Jacobs had his way in the first half. He leads the league in yards after contact, so it's not just us that couldn't tackle him, but everybody in the league has struggled to get him on the ground, especially in a cold game, lots of rain, lots of wind. You lean on a running back like that in those conditions, and it worked for majority of the first half, but you play with a lead, and in the second half, they can't really lean on the run game as much, and they had to go away from it and start, spreading the ball out and getting the ball moving through the air. And then Josh Jacobs kind of became irrelevant. And then I know I said this in last week's podcast, when he gets going, he's really, really hard to slow down because he'll just get chunk yard after chunk yard. And late in the second half, middle of the second half, excuse me, he has the 4th down and 1. And early on in the game, he converts that 4th down and 1 10 times out of 10. But because he hasn't been on the field, he's been sitting on the sideline for however long, and he hasn't gotten nearly as many carries as he did in the first half. He's a guy that needs to get warmed up and needs to get going, and he wasn't able to do that in the second half, and he was held in check. Um, the linebacker depth is definitely an issue. Not having Malcolm Rodriguez and Derek Barnes, it's not great. Hopefully we can get them back relatively soon. But yeah, you can just tell the linebacker depth and the run support defensively just hasn't been nearly as good as it was the first couple weeks. But that's injuries. That happens in the NFL. Every team suffers injuries, so got to figure out a way to fight through it. And I think we did a good job, especially in the run game in the second half. Jaden Reed, I didn't love. He had a couple big plays, um, spread out over like 2 drives. The rest of the game was held in check for the rest of the 52 minutes of the game, but there was a few minutes there where he was able to get open down the field, and he's a guy, if let get open over the top, he's going to burn you. So that's going to have to definitely get figured out. Obviously, Brian Branch wasn't in the game, and he's one of the best safety helpers over the top in the league. So I think that had to do something with it. A lot of backups playing, Ennis Rakestraw getting significant minutes, Amik Robertson. Yeah, just some guys that aren't used to playing every single snap were. So hopefully that gets figured out going into this week. I know Houston, we're playing the Texans, and they have a very potent offensive attack. So especially through the air. So hopefully that gets shored up, but we'll have Brian Branch back, so I don't see that being too big of an issue. Just something I wanted to point out. Um, Again, like I said earlier, got bailed out multiple times by drop balls, but that's not our problem. Control what you can control. Our offense, we caught the ball when it was thrown on the numbers, and when it was thrown in the chest, we caught it, and the Packers didn't, and that was the fundamental difference between winning this game and losing it. And then other than that, I mean, I think the defense played really, really well. We forced Green Bay to play our style of football, and we came out on top like we've been doing all year. So I love the fact that our offense is able to get out to early leads, but I definitely think that if we do, I think last year, if we got out to a deficit, it was hard for our defense. If our offense was struggling, it was hard for our defense to be a big playmaking unit. And I think this year that's different. I think that if you see the Lions go down a score or two, like in the Vikings game early on, the defense was like, okay, adjustments, lock in, get it done. And that's what happened. Um, and then a couple other things I wanted to touch on before we wrapped up. One thing with the Lions, a lot of people want Brad Holmes to go out and get a guy to replace Aiden Hutchinson. I've been hearing it all over Twitter, all over Instagram. People want it to get done, and today he did just that. There was a quote I saw a couple of weeks ago, and it said, "Maturing is realizing that Brad Holmes is not going to go get the defensive end you want." And so I set my expectations a little lower after the Hutchinson injury, and I've been high. I've been watching Za'Darius Smith film, kind of reading up on him, reading about his situation, if he likes his time, if he's liking his time in Cleveland, and he wasn't. He wanted out of there, and so the Lions went and got him. They only gave up a fifth and a sixth round pick, and they got a seventh back. So the trade ended up being Za'Darius Smith, a seventh round pick, to Detroit, and then Green Bay, excuse me. Cleveland got Detroit's fifth and sixth round pick this year. Obviously, you hate to lose draft picks with just how great Brad Holmes is at drafting, especially in later rounds, but I think it's going to be worth it for sure. Only time will tell, but I'm excited to see what he can do. He's played for the Vikings. He's played for the Packers. He's played for the Ravens. He's played in these some really, really good defenses, and He's played for the Lions division rivals. So he's gonna have a little chip on his shoulder for the final two games, one versus Vikings, one versus Packers. And he's a proven veteran. He'll just be a good guy to have around, and he's gonna help Josh Pascal and James Houston and Marcus Davenport. And in next year, he'll help out Aiden Hutchinson as well. So I think it's a smart play. Even when Hutch was in the lineup, all the complaint always was we don't have another guy to complement him on the other side that can also apply pressure. And I know Za'Darius Smith's sack numbers this year in the past couple years haven't been great, but he has 5 sacks so far this year, and he had 5 sacks last year, and the year before that he had 10. So he's still a really, really solid player. He's only 32 years old. He might not have 5, 6 years left in him, but he's got one. And we've seen it. He's applied pressure. His PFF rating has been great all year. And I think he's going to be another guy that flourishes in this Aaron Glenn system. So love that we went out and got a guy to kind of fill that Hutchinson role. I know a lot of people wanted that, including myself. And Brad Holmes, for probably the first time ever, actually listened to the fan base and went out and actually got somebody because he's just lived through the draft, which no complaints. Keep doing what you're doing, but I'm glad we went out to get somebody. I think that with the lack of pressure we had this week against the Packers, no sacks, hardly any pressures, it's good to see that we're going to get some reinforcements on the edge for Aaron Glenn's defense. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on, hear me out, okay? I just want to move on to one other team, and that is the Detroit Pistons, okay? I know, trust me, I know more better than anybody. They are a brutal franchise to cheer for. They're a brutal franchise to watch, and it's been the past 20 years have been miserable, to say the least. I mean, I started watching basketball probably in about 2011. And I just remember Charlie Villanueva and Kyle Singler and Andrew Maxwell and Josh Smith, Brandon Jennings. The list goes on, man. And seeing a young team that can play defense, that spaces the floor, that has 2 or 3 offensive weapons, it's just refreshing, man. And I want to talk about it, okay? I don't want to go too in depth, but I just wanted to make some observations. One, the defense of this team looks way more locked in than years past. When you look at Dwayne Casey, his success has come on the offensive side of the ball. When you look at Monty Williams, his offense came from good offense. His success came from good offense. When you look at JB Bickerstaff, what he's been able to do with Cleveland, he has predicated himself on defense with Jared Allen, with Evan Mobley, with Darius Garland, who's a good perimeter defender, Donovan Mitchell, who's a good perimeter defender. Isaac Okoro had been getting very consistent minutes for them in JB Bickerstaff's time because he's a great perimeter defender. And you can just see, it's not going to happen overnight, but the defense is there. You hold the Lakers to 103 points. The Lakers are one of the best offenses in the league this year. You hold Brooklyn to 92 points. Especially after coming off of a game where you allow the Knicks to score 128 and you get blown out by 30, you go and you take on the Nets, you beat them. You take on the Lakers, you beat them. And that is just something we haven't seen before. A 30-point loss would have compounded into many, 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 many losses in the past 20 years. And this team has not allowed it to affect them. And I think that starts obviously at the defensive end. I also think it starts with just the added spacing for Cade Cunningham, which allows him to be a threat scoring and facilitating. He had a triple double last night. And it wasn't like he had 35 points. It was a 17 point, 11 assists, 11 rebound triple double. And when you can get that type of productivity out of your do it all point guard, it opens up Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jaden Ivey and Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley and some of these other guys that we know have great offensive skill sets, but just need a facilitating point guard to get them the ball. And you can just see as they get more comfortable together and they start to mesh that coexistence between Cade Cunningham and the rest of these guys is starting to come. Even Jaden Ivey, who is primarily an on-ball guy, has started to play off ball much more effectively than he has the past 2 years. Jalen Duren is becoming more comfortable in the offense. Isaiah Stewart, because he's not sitting on the three-point line anymore, because we needed to space the floor with a shooting power forward, we can now have him come off the bench and be a defensive-minded player who sits in the paint and blocks LeBron James twice in one game. And again, we're not going to be a 56 win team this year. We're just not. But that doesn't mean that they're not going in the right direction. And we're no longer an auto win. That was so frustrating last year is we were a tune-up game. The Pistons are coming to town. Let's go. We get a win, man. We've struggled lately. We get to play the Pistons tonight. We're going to win this game easily. And that's not the case anymore. You can't take us lightly anymore because the defensive energy is actually existent. And it wasn't last year in years past. So I'm just glad to see that this team is now a competitive basketball team. Yeah, I wrote this down. If teams don't come ready to rebound and ready to battle, they're going to lose. You can see the Lakers were not ready for Isaiah Stewart to come in and bully Anthony Davis. Obviously, Anthony Davis had a great game and he does his thing, he gets his points, but he wasn't that big of a factor on the offensive glass. He only ended with 9 rebounds and only 1 offensive rebound. And that's because Jalen Duren is becoming an actual competent defender and rebounder in this league. And like I said, Isaiah Stewart is 6'9" and he plays like he's 7'2". So again, if you don't come to fight, we're going to punch you in the face and we're going to beat you. And I love it because that's what the city of Detroit is. We embody the bite your kneecap. We embody the grit. And now that the basketball team from the city is also embodying that, I just love it. I love to see it. And especially at the same time as the Lions flourishing. It's nice. It's just nice to win one, man. It's just nice to win one. So shout out the Pistons for winning back-to-back games. Let's go. We play the Hornets tomorrow night. I'm recording this on Tuesday night, so we play the Hornets on Wednesday, November 6th. Another very winnable game. The Hornets have struggled just like us the past 10 years, 15, 20 years. It's another very winnable game. Couple other things I wanted to just touch on for the Pistons. Offensively, if I'm going to convince you guys to tune into a couple games, okay? You don't have to watch every game like I do. I'm a psychopath. But it's not going to be watching the 2016 to 2021 Warriors, okay? It's not, but it's enough to get the job done, okay? It's the offensive firepower from this team comes from a couple of guys, and they're fun to watch. It is fun to watch Cade Cunningham operate in offense. It's fun to watch Jaden Ivey fly around. When they're under control and when they don't turn the ball over, they're even more fun to watch. So I just think that as this team gets more comfortable and as JB Bickerstaff continues to coach his butt off, we're gonna be in for at least some sort of positivity throughout the rest of the season. And we're not going to be the worst team in the NBA this year, I guarantee it. No, there's no way we have the worst record in the NBA. We're too good. We're too talented. Our coaching staff's too good. Jarrett Jack's is an assistant coach now. He's been coaching up Cade And I just think that they're in a way better place than they have been in years past. Trajan Langdon, shout out. Shout out to you, man. I want to wrap it up soon, but Jaden Ivey, again, looks way better as a spot up shooter off ball. Love to see that. Veteran leadership now with Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley. That hasn't been the case in the past. You had Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks, who are not vocal leaders. They're not pump you up guys. But Tim Hardaway Jr. is a spark plug. He defends his players. He's an older veteran. He's about 31 now. He's seen a competent basketball team. He's seen what Dallas Mavericks have been able to do the last couple of years with a Cade Cunningham-esque point guard in Luka Doncic. Good to see him start to shoot the ball well. Tobias Harris, another guy who's got championship DNA, who knows what it means to make the playoffs and make a run. And Malik Beasley as well, another championship DNA guy who's going to complement this young core very, very well. So love to see the spacing, love to see the added shooting and the added veteran leadership. And we haven't even had Ausar Thompson hasn't even played yet this year, and the defense looks that good. So when we get him back, that's just going to be another guy that we can have guard LeBron James, and we can have guard bigger threats, or bigger offensive threats, excuse me, in the Eastern Conference, like Karl Anthony Towns, who absolutely cooked us. But Ausar Thompson is so versatile on the defensive end. He can guard a center and he can guard a point guard. So another guy that's going to really help this team defensively. And I'm excited to see what he can do offensively, because I know he struggled with his shot last year, but I think he worked on it a ton this offseason, and he's got a lot of potential. He's very young. Another young guy who struggled with his shot, but still looks good. Ron Holland giving great bench minutes, plays good defense. He flies down the floor, gets a lot of layups. He's very good at filling lanes. He's very good at kind of staying hidden when he's on his break, and Cade Cunningham can dish it to him and he goes and finishes. He finishes very well at the rim over taller defenders. Just glad to see him. And then JB Bickerstaff, he's just good for this team. He's engaged. He doesn't want to lose. I don't think Monty Williams really cared last year if we won or lost games, but JB Bickerstaff clearly doesn't want to lose games, and he's going to do his best to put these guys in positions to succeed. And then last thing I said, we may only win 30 games, but it's going to be a much better product than we've seen in years. It's exciting. These guys are showing improvement. And I know you don't want to support them. It's hard to support them. It's hard to support Tom Gores. But man, they need it more than ever right now, because they're starting to kind of make a little bit of a push to start to get away from the bottom of the bottom. And if that can happen, man, Detroit deserves a good basketball team. We really, really do. Why not have the Lions and the Pistons and the Tigers and the Red Wings all be good at the same time? That would be miraculous. And it would give this city even more hope than it already has. That's all I've got. Pistons take on the Hornets tomorrow night, which is a very winnable game. And the Lions take on Houston in Houston on Sunday Night Football this week. Let's hope both teams can keep it rolling, baby. This has been Motor City Connected with Kyle Garrison. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.